looking out onto my eyelashes in an agony of delightful anticipation.
Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make.
From the D&E Studios, welcome to the Dracula Podcast. I am your host, Lawrence Burgess, or LB for short. Thank you to my producer, Adam Stover, Rob, and Martha of Southgate Media, and most of all, you for listening. We aim to bring you thoughtful and stimulating media, reviewing the films, books, music, and plays that make Stoker's creation so beloved, the criticism to inform your purchasing decisions, interesting guests, and the needs of our communities. Drop us a line. Please send us your questions and comments on Facebook at The Dracula Podcast. There you can find the application to play directly into your browser. Very awesome. You can also find us at facebook.com/Dracula Audio, no spaces, and also at Dracula Audio, no spaces on Twitter. Once again, that's Dracula Audio, no spaces on Twitter and Facebook, or at the Dracula inbox at audio.dracula@gmail.com. We will do our best to respond to queries by direct response or on our show. This podcast is also brought to you by the Foxborough in Charleston, West Virginia. Folks, they're the industry leader in scoring, multi-track audio recording, mixing, mastering, production, and graphic design. You can find them on Facebook. Go to that page, give it a like. For queries, please send correspondence to 1007 Bigley Avenue, Suite 319, Charleston, West Virginia 25302. Once again, that's the Foxborough at 1007 Bigley Avenue, Suite 319, Charleston, West Virginia 25302. Folks, welcome. I appreciate you listening and joining in. Hope you took a chance to listen to our previous episodes. If not, check out the Southgate Media homepage at southgatemediagroup.com. That's southgatemediagroup.com. There you can find us all over the place at iTunes, Libsyn, Stitcher, and a whole mess of other places around the friendly interwebs. And the 10-episode second season of Penny Dreadful, oh yes, premieres on May 3rd. That's 2 days before Cinco de Mayo at 10 p.m. on Showtime. To prepare our listeners for this wonderful second season, we're going to touch on each episode of Penny Dreadful chronologically. Spoilers ahead. If you've listened to this show or even heard whispers about us, you know we cover Penny Dreadful, and I have been warning you to buy the Blu-ray. Do it. We will wear you out until you do. I will wear down the entire internet until they bow to the awe-inspiring might of Ava Green and her show. Do it for the love of what you hold dear, for if you don't watch Penny Dreadful, the terrorists are going to win, and you don't love America. Before we spotlight communications from the Dracula inbox, I'm going to address a couple things. One, the length of our show. I've been getting a lot of emails and comments concerning such. If you've listened to our previous episodes, you know that we keep things tight. We do it for a variety of reasons. One, quality over quantity. Pay attention, long-witted podcasters. People aren't dumb, and using fillers isn't going to help your show. Number two, people are busy. Consumers choose what they want to consume in a week, and they are choosing us, and they are thanking us because we don't waste their time. Number three, Penny Dreadful on this show sells itself. Our listeners are smart and discerning. So to our listeners, thank you. We love you to death. Our criticisms. We've been told by a couple of folks that we've been too hard on numerous properties, specifically the NBC version of Dracula and Dracula Untold. Folks, we're not hard, we're honest. We don't promote garbage, and if a media property doesn't hold up to our standards, we're going to let you know about it. Again, value. There's a friendly competition between some podcasts on the Southgate Media Group, debating which show is better or which show has the better star or the better music and the better director. I'm going to settle this debate right now and put it to rest. Are you ready? We, the Dracula Podcast, have the sexiest show on the internet. Our listeners are even sexier. Roll that up and smoke it. Seriously though, SMG has been nothing but sweet and kind to us. and we really appreciate them allowing this unquantifiably sexy show to rocket into orbit along with the sexiest listeners in the history of mankind. Update on Dracula the audio drama. We're still a few months out from getting the project wrapped. Greg Hunt is making a killer soundtrack. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that this album is going to be the most powerful and gut-wrenching series of songs you've heard. It's called Of Blood and Bloom. How cool is that? You've heard from me before about how wonderful our cast is, specifically Ethan Livers, Joshua Drew, Andrea Parkins, and John Johnson. But I want to mention a few names that may be overlooked and that you should remember. Andy Walker, a dear, dear friend of mine for many, many years. He came in from Washington. He played Lord Arthur Holmwood, the Daily Graph correspondent. He's nothing short of amazing. His accent is strong. I'm so fortunate to have him along. Quincy P. Morris is often a character that is overlooked in this novel, which takes place in London. He is the lone voice of stability, and Brent Kessinger brings a quiet strength to the role that's sorely needed. Aubrey Roberts, Cassandra Phelps, and Elaine Abdallah. Our sexy three sisters. These girls got into the booth, and they did things with their voices that, it would be hard to say on the air. There's so much more going on with Dracula the audio drama. Thanks again to our cast and crew. They're really working their butts off. If you see one of these folks on the street, give them a high five. They deserve it. I just finished a short film about The Big Bad. They're a horror-influenced punk band from West Virginia. Folks, I'm not a punk fan at all. I think it's silly and the music hurts my ears. I'm talking about the genre itself. But these guys make the music sound good. We're going to talk to their frontman Zach Bassham about Dracula's influence on his songwriting and the musical choices within the next couple of weeks. If you have a chance to see The Big Bad live, do it. They're in Louisville, Cincinnati, Atlanta, Charleston, West Virginia, Lexington. They're all over the place. Find them on the map and book your trip. This is great music, and they're even better people. From my dear friend Derek to Wolfman Jack and his epic hair, Nathan Sticks to Adam's face contortions, Brian's rhythm, and Zach's ownership of the audience. It's really an experience not to miss. Do you know the frontman's official name is Zacula Von Nasty? I always think of him in that makeup somehow, entering a 5-star restaurant and some guy saying, "Mr. Von Nasty, your table is ready," or some other brand of foolishness. But again, great guys. I had a blast filming the short film. The title of it is called Music of Mayhem. There are select scenes that can be seen up at Horror Hound Weekend. We hope you had a chance to take a trip to go up there and see them in Cincinnati. Alright folks, here it is. This is our subcast, casting Dread, the Penny Dreadful Show. The 4th episode of Penny Dreadful is entitled Demimonde. It was written by John Logan and directed by Deirbla Walsh. And now it's time for a little story. We open to a decadent orgy of sex, drugs, and music in the house of Dorian Gray. Amongst the teeming ranks, he watches, almost bored. After the sexual mayhem ends, he walks down a secret passage and stops before something large. Then he removes the cover, sits before it, and gazes in awe. In the morning outside of a church, Vanessa eyes the building with longing. She sees Dorian strolling and follows him. She finds him at the gardens where they rekindle their captivation. He introduces her to deadly nightshade and all sorts of beautiful and rare flowers. Inside Sir Malcolm's house, Victor consults with the hematologist, Professor Van Helsing. Victor is confused by the results of the blood. Van Helsing states that the case involves cells which participate in the eating of blood, to which Victor closes the door. Van Helsing says that Sir Malcolm seeks a cure to something he doesn't understand, but he does. intimately. Victor stands at the window and sees the creature Caliban outside. When going out to meet him, Caliban warns Victor to be at his work to make him a mate. Beautiful. In the basement of Sir Malcolm's, Fenton is chained to a wall. He asks for Vanessa. He asks for Mother. He is held down as Victor takes a blood sample from him. Then he asks Ethan to give Fenton a blood transfusion. He refuses, but Sir Malcolm accepts. While recovering, Sir Malcolm tells of his expeditions to Africa and invites Ethan to his next one. Vanessa is amused, for she knows that he won't go. And then Sembeni warns them that Fenton has awakened, and Fenton is hungry. Vanessa offers him an apple. He looks, waits, but refuses. He needs blood and flesh and guts. Ethan cannot stand the sight of it, and leaves the house. Sembeni brings Fenton a cat. At the Grand Guignol, Ethan and Brona take in the show. Also watching from separate ends up high are Dorian and Vanessa. Meanwhile, Caliban skillfully works the stage effects to the newest play, The Transformed Beast. At Sir Malcolm's house, Victor is curious of why Sir Malcolm wants to leave for an expedition. He responds by stating that Ethan is nothing to him, finger on the trigger. Sir Malcolm lost a son in Africa. In the basement, Fenton awakes and looks up, calling out, "Master." Chews at his bonds and bites at his own wrists. At the show, all enjoy The Transformed Beast. Sembeni is in the audience, watching over Vanessa. At Sir Malcolm's, the basement is empty. While in the living quarters, they hear a noise from upstairs. Victor and Sir Malcolm ascend, all the while Fenton crawling behind them. They enter Vanessa's room. Then a pale-faced man with red eyes and razor-sharp teeth snarls at them. Fenton cries out, "She's not here, master." Then the thing sees the cross and dives out the window. Meanwhile, Fenton fights Sir Malcolm. He hurls Fenton at the window and his head lands on a shard of glass. Fenton cries out for his mother in his very last breath. At the show, Vanessa, Dorian, Ethan, and Brona meet. Dorian believes he's met Brona before, but she denies it. Brona is upset and jealous of Vanessa, and angry with Ethan. After she storms out, Dorian comes outside to console Ethan. Brona flees into the London night, falling over and coughing up blood. Meanwhile, Dorian leads Ethan to a secret place where men are taking bets. A dog is placed into the center of a ring with hordes of rats and begins to kill them. Ethan cannot stand the sight of it and goes to the bar. He is approached by 3 men who fight him, but Ethan stands his own. At Dorian's home, Ethan cleans up as Dorian enjoys the winnings. Dorian offers him his very first drink of absinthe, the Green Fairy. Vanessa returns home. Sir Malcolm states that it was there, searching for her. It is suggested that Mina is manipulating Vanessa and may be beyond help. But Sir Malcolm cannot blame Mina. Vanessa is angry, stating that Malcolm had manipulated Mina her whole life. The conversation ends by Sir Malcolm stating that Vanessa is the daughter he truly deserves. At Dorian's home, Ethan reflects on his past while Dorian plays a ballad from Tristan and Isolde. As the music builds, he remembers. He remembers the pain of Brona leaving. He remembers the violence of the play. He remembers the violence of the dog as it killed the rats again and again. Then he charges at Dorian and kisses him. Dorian returns the favor. Again, more questions. What is Dr. Van Helsing concealing? Why did Ethan refuse the blood transfusion? The Master is seeking out Vanessa. How long can she stay alive? Why is Ethan so opposed to violence and killing? Is Dorian's subtle manipulation out of thrills? or genuine affection? And finally, what was done to Mina to drive her so far from her family and dearest friend? All these are questions which we will try to answer next time. Folks, we hope you enjoyed our bit of storytelling on the 4th episode of Penny Dreadful entitled Demimonde. We are halfway through, and I hope you're enjoying the show just as much as I am. Little bit of cleanup here. Samedi seems like a watchdog. He should have more to do. I'm not sure what the writer's intent is. Is he a filler? There's definitely some sort of tie with Sir Malcolm as an explorer, but again, we're not sure. Dorian winning the rat bet seems a little lazy in its writing, even though Dorian should be experienced enough to make the proper calculations. They've been talking about the Master for a while, and he finally appears. But something about the look of him is off. He looks like a mix between Count Orlok, Kurt Barlow from Salem's Lot 79, and Nomak from the second Blade movie. It's intimidating, but something about the look doesn't feel right. But folks, that's it. Brona gets more screen time and grows as a character, and it absolutely works. David Warner as Van Helsing is inspired casting. He steals every single frame. The Grand Guignol is a superior set piece. It's fun, it's large, it feels absolutely real, and honestly, I would like to go to the Grand Guignol and see it play. Not necessarily in the environment it is now. But folks, getting attached to characters in this show is dangerous. First Proteus by the hand of Caliban, then Fenton by Sir Malcolm. Who's next? And now, folks, it's time for our media review portion of the show, or as Professor Van Helsing calls it,
the ghastly paraphernalia of our beneficial trade.
Isn't he amazing? Speaking of amazing, we get the man himself, the man behind the voice of Van Helsing, John Johnson. He actually joined me for a series of media reviews where we went back and forth, and we reviewed the entire Hammer Dracula franchise, all the way from 1958 to 1975. And we're going to begin the series of those right now.
And ladies and gentlemen, we're back on the Dracula podcast. I'd like to introduce you to a special guest. He's known for his work as Charles Dickens, The Wind in the Willows, and his sublime performance as Abraham Van Helsing and Mr. Swales on Dracula the audio drama. It is John Johnson of the Alban Arts Theater and the beloved state of West Virginia. John, how are you today?
Oh, doing great, Lawrence. Thank you for that introduction, too. I don't know if it's deserved or not.
Of course it is. In fact, I probably underplayed it a little. But John is actually a Dracula historian and aficionado, and our media review, we're going to spotlight the entire Hammer series. And if it goes on a little over, we're going to break it down into multiple parts. So, of the Hammer series in general, from 58 to 74, what do you think about it as a whole?
As a whole, I think it's a wonderful series. I mean, come on. Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, those are the actors that really get to me. That's the type of acting that I would like to do. You know, Peter Cushing especially, he can do no wrong.
Why do they get to you, though?
There's just such a power as well as a sympathy. Cushing, you know, there was that properness about him, but at the same time, such a professional in what he was doing. In the scenes that required sympathy, there was this great compassion. And of course, reading up on the man afterwards, I mean, the gentleman of horror, I mean, that's what they called him. I mean, they were all gentle. And Christopher Lee, I don't think, I mean, with the twirl of that cape, I mean, such power on the screen, I mean, it doesn't come very often. But they command, that when they're there on the screen, I mean, your eyes are on them. And I always think that if I could ever do anything on stage to that point, that all eyes remained on me, then
All right, folks, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to break down each film. I have not talked to John about each film specifically ahead of time, so if we disagree, there will be a little bit of debate. So we'll be able to go back and forth. And also, if we get the film, it will get the Dracula podcast seal of approval, and at least a few of these will be getting that. So let's start off. Okay. 1958. It was called Horror of Dracula, but in the UK it was actually called Dracula.
Right.
It was directed by Terence Fisher and written by Jimmy Sangster.
It was a follow-up to their hit, The Curse of Frankenstein, which starred Cushing as Baron Victor Frankenstein, and Lee as the monster.
Why do you think they took such an abrupt turn into color? Do you think the time was right for the riskiness of the thing in the 50s?
I think it was. I think that it was a new thing as well. They could do things in color, and I think that these storylines were the perfect thing for them to try it with, for the shock value and everything else. Once they did The Curse of Frankenstein, it's to my knowledge that all doors were open. It was such a success that they had to come up with something to follow it with. And Dracula was just the obvious choice.
It seems that way. Whenever there's Dracula, there's Frankenstein. And I suppose Universal started that trend back in the 30s.
Oh, absolutely.
And this was the revitalization, essentially, of the horror movement. Mr. Gatiss, he did a history of horror, and he broke it down from the Universal series to the Hammer series. So let's talk about Horror of Dracula specifically.
Okay.
Why do you like this film?
I like this film in particular. Number one, because of the performances. And in looking at the whole series, this is the one that sets everything up. This introduces you to Lee as Dracula. And I'll tell you, seeing him in that very first scene where we see Dracula at the top of the stairs, this tall man, I mean, Sir Christopher is a very tall man. That presence, that cape, and the whole 9 yards. It's commanding. It really is. Now, as far as being 100% faithful to the book, well, it wasn't. Much to our dismay, I know, and I'm sure, well, Christopher Lee has also said the same. Peter Cushing, it was one of his things. He often questioned the fact that they didn't get a double Dutcher, as he called it, to take on the role of Van Helsing, but he was told to play him as himself. And I think that it's a good representation of Peter Cushing playing himself.
I agree. And also an interesting tidbit for your DC Comics fans. Michael Gough was actually in this movie. He played Alfred Pennyworth in the Burton Schumacher Batman franchise, which was decent and then went to total poo.
And someone else to look out for as well is the veteran stage and screen character actor Miles Malleson. Oh, you'll see him popping the lid of the coffins there. What did I do with that? He was a mainstay throughout the Hammer series of films.
Okay. So criticisms. I have a few, and you already touched on one. It strays very, very far from the novel. But you also have to consider the time it was in and the constraints of the budget. I don't like the art direction. I think some of the costuming is not really appropriate. I think they should have went black on black, and that would have made more of a stark contrast.
Agreed.
Yet, however, Peter Cushing was also in a bit of that dark clothing. They combine characters, and that's a big no-no.
Yes, it is. That was a big concern that I have with it.
However, the directing was superb. Christopher Lee made an extremely solid presence. The women looked good. The shots were extremely well framed. So I give it the Dracula Podcast seal of approval. And my recommendation is to actually consume it on Blu-ray. Unfortunately, it's not out in the States. It is, however, available on a Region B, which is called Dracula, and has a 3-disc Blu-ray collection, including the restored Japanese ending that was thought lost.
Oh, yes.
So if you can get a hold of that, but Warner Home Video actually has the rights to it, and I believe they may be working on it, but nothing public has come out. There have been a lot of whispers and innuendo, but that's nothing to snark at.
Folks, that was John Johnson and myself discussing the Hammer horror series featuring Dracula, which started in 1958. We covered briefly the franchise at the beginning, where it wants to go, and we also touched on the horror of Dracula in 1958. Once again, it does get the Dracula Podcast seal of approval. But one of the reasons why I love talking to John is not only is he just a wonderful human being, but he also gets it. He is a Dracula historian and aficionado, and his work in Dracula the audio drama is transcendent. I'm talking about greatness. When you think about Van Helsing, you'll think sometimes about Edward Van Sloan, Peter Cushing, Frank Finlay, Laurence Olivier, Anthony Hopkins. But folks, they're playing a little bit of Van Helsing. Just a little. John Johnson is straight out of the book, and that's why, folks, he's the best. and it's not even close. And I can't wait to unleash him, Ethan Livers, Andrea Parkins, Joshua Drew, Andy Walker, Megan Jett, and the rest upon the world. I can't wait. And when it's released, you're going to have something special on your hands. But folks, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much to Rob and Martha and Southgate Media, and to my producer Adam Stover. And most of all, folks, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. We really appreciate it. We're striving to be the very best, and you guys are taking this straight to the top and beyond. And most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, to you and yours, have an excellent day.